Morgan, the feature writer for the San Antonio Marriage Initiative. And I am just so delighted today to introduce you to Ron Deal. Ron is recognized as the leading expert on blended family resources in the country. He's the director of Family Life Blended, founder of Smart Step Families, and the author of the Smart Step Family series of best-selling books. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist, conference speaker, and host of the Family Life Blended podcast, as you can see by his fantastic microphone there. So, Ron, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Amy. It's good to be with you.
Well, let's dive right in. How did you get involved with blended family ministry? Because you yourself are not from a blended family.
That's right. Anybody involved in ministry of any kind finds themselves working with couples and families in circumstances that you haven't lived yourself. That's really how I got into this. I was a youth minister who figured out I needed to know more about family. So I went back to school to get a degree in marriage and family therapy. And I was exposed to a lot of things that made sense to me about the kids that I had been serving in their lives, single parent homes, step family homes. And that set me on a course when I went right back into local church ministry after graduating. I wanted to do marriage and family ministry across the board, all family types, shapes, and sizes. I believe the church ought to be relevant to wherever people are. And so that led me down a road of trying to figure out how to do marriage ministry right alongside single parent ministry, step family ministry. And what do you know? Nobody was doing step family ministry, basically, when I started in the early 1990s. And so we bumbled and stumbled our way through and learned a few things. And I started sharing that with people. And the next thing you know, it became my life. And so here we are today, running Family Life Blended, the division of Family Life that focuses and specializes in step family ministry, equipping guides and leaders and mentors to help couples, as well as doing enrichment events that help couples themselves.
Well, I love that. What's the need? Are there step families in the church today?
Oh,
I
yeah.
wonder if people are aware of that.
Yeah. Anybody who's watching right now already knows. I mean, you're either counseling couples and step families, you're coaching them, or, at least a third of all new weddings, could be as high as 40% or more of new weddings are forming blended families. So if you're doing premarital work, you're working with couples. And by the way, it sort of begs the question, if you're not working with these couples, where's the disconnect? Because they are out there. This is a growing demographic in our culture today. I could throw a lot of numbers at you. 113 million people in the United States alone have a step relationship, meaning a step parent, a step sibling, or a stepchild. They either grew up in a blended family, their brother is a part of a step family, and now they're a step uncle, or they're a step grandparent. Somehow it is very real and close to their family experience. 40% of parents raising kids are blended families. This is a growing demographic. Here's a stat I'll throw at you, Amy, that I think is really relevant for a lot of people. 15% of first marriages form blended families now. Now, a lot of people think this is always a divorce and remarriage narrative. That's true. It's also a post-death, later life, couples living longer, somebody's widowed, now you're marrying again at age 65 plus, forming 3 generations of step relationships. But now it is even first marriages, 15% of first marriages. And if one of the partners is 30 or above, which is very common, it's 24% of first marriages form blended families. Somebody had a child, bringing that into this marriage. This is not going away. It's only increasing and growing. And very, very few churches are doing anything about it. This is an incredible opportunity for people to do outreach, to do ministry, to minister to couples and people who have been burned by the church and are marginalized, just sort of living on the peripheral of church life, don't know if they can really come home again. It's an amazing opportunity for people in ministry.
Well, and you have kind of resources kind of from head to toe, from start to finish.
Mhm.
Do you want to start from the beginning? Because I know one of your newer resources is that preparing to blend, and that's kind of the start of this journey. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
Okay. Well, So I've written 9 books, but in the Smart Step Family series that you referenced earlier, we've actually had other authors contribute to some really good things. And so there's about 15 books in that series. That does not count all the videos that we've produced. We have a curriculum based on my book, The Smart Step Family. I've worked with others in Right Now Media to produce a second curriculum. Every event we do called Blended and Blessed, it's a live stream event that churches can host for couples. It happens every spring. We've done 5 of those. They're all available on online for streaming, and that essentially is another curriculum. So you're talking well over 20 resources that are accessible from a faith-based point of view, practical life. And we're just starting, really. I mean, we're pulling together speakers and authors and writers at our annual summit on Step Family Ministry and trying to equip others and learn about other resources that are available. I mean, it's a great time to be stepping into this space because it used to be that there was nothing available, and now there's tons of materials that are available. Sometimes people don't know where to start. So let me just say, we have a resource, for example, Dating and the Single Parent is obviously written for those either dating somebody with child or you have a child. How do you do that well? How do you prepare? How do you think about not just the idea of getting married, but how do you date with children involved and do that well? My latest book, Preparing to Blend, then helps engaged couples go to the wedding and be ready for life after that. It is the first and only great structured program for premarital education for couples getting married and forming blended families. You've really got to do that differently than what you do with first-time married couples without children. It's a totally different process. And we give you 10 sessions in a box, if you will, in a book, to be able to lead them through that. And then we have a number of resources designed for people who are married and blended families. The Smart Step Family is the most comprehensive resource that we have. Smart Step Mom, Smart Step Dad, obviously focus in on those particular roles. We have a book on money now, and I teamed up with a couple of people who know far more about money than I do. And we not only integrated money ideas, but relationship dynamics going on under the surface in blended families. So the Smart Step Family Guide to Financial Planning helps people before already married, whatever the case is, kind of get things in order so that they honor the right people in the right way with their family, with their finances. Those are the kinds of resources that we have. A book that does a deep dive into marriage relationships within a blended family. We even have a devotional, 365-day devotional for couples in blended families. There is a ton out there. And I'm just going to go ahead and mention our podcast that you already mentioned, Family Life Blended Podcast. Does a deep dive on a variety of subjects. I just got an email 10 minutes ago, saw an email came in from somebody saying, we're older in life. And Amy, they're saying, we're looking for resources on what we call adult step families. We have tons of stuff on that subject, right? It doesn't matter where you are in your life journey. We've tried to develop something very practical and helpful from a faith-based point of view that will be helpful to them.
Yeah, because I mean that can be very tricky. My husband's family had that situation. His mother remarried, and her husband had 4 children, grown, and he was one of 4. And all of a sudden, you got 8. You got all these step brothers and sisters who are all married and have children. And are you doing Christmas presents for everybody? It can
That's
be a
right.
little tricky, and maybe you like some of them better than others.
That's right. And some of them like you better than others.
Yeah, yeah, it can be really tricky. I want to go back to something though in the preparing to blend, because you and I talked about the atmosphere
Mhm.
of a second marriage or a second relationship when you're bringing in the kids, and how you use the analogy of an ocean. And I thought it was such a lovely picture to help people maybe who aren't quite as familiar really understand why this effort to help
Mhm.
step families do this well is important. Could you go over that with us?
Yeah, let me just tell you a quick story, an illustration. My wife and I have been blessed to do some scuba diving in the past. Uh, it- it's very different to go scuba diving in a lake in the middle of Arkansas where it's super cold. You get down 15 feet and it's cold, right? That is a very different experience. The water's not moving, it's muddy, you can't see very far, versus being in the middle of the ocean where you can see forever and it's warm. But yet there's sharks out there.
Yeah.
There's none in the lakes, so you have different challenges depending on where you are. We went diving once in Cozumel, where they have what they call drift diving, there's such an undercurrent that it moves you laterally very quickly. You can lose track of
Mhm.
where the boat is if you're not careful. I actually had a near-death experience in Cozumel as a result, in part because of the drifting. Here's my point. You better know the ocean in which you swim. Every marriage swims in a different ocean. Now, when Nan and I got married at a very young age without any children and took off into life, that's one set of ocean. The water temperature is a certain way. We were so immature and so many different things. There were lots of sharks in our relationship. You get the idea. Other people getting married, middle life, 3, 4, 5 kids, history, background, pain, perhaps being widowed, perhaps being divorced. You know what it is to love and be rejected. You know what it is to invest a lot of yourself only to have somebody turn their back on you. That changes the water temperature. It
Yeah.
gets colder. It's harder to trust when you get back into that ocean and start swimming again. And there's definitely some sharks. That residue of pain on your heart, it totally changes the dynamic of marriage and trust. And how do I trust my kids with you if I'm not sure you're going to be around tomorrow? That changes the dynamic of parenting. And then there's a former spouse, a big shark that lives over there where the children move back and forth, and we've got to cooperate around parenting. But every time I talk to my ex, you seem to get frustrated with me, feeling like they have more influence over our life and schedule and finances than you do. And that's just sort of true. And how do we navigate that? All of a sudden, the other home is influencing our marriage and our parenting. And those are realities that blended families deal with. And I'm here to tell you, that's the stuff that ripples into marriages and causes the divorce rate to be higher among couples in blended families than in first marriages. And if we think we can just keep focusing on the dyad, the husband-wife relationship, and ignore the triadic and quadratic dynamics going on around them that cause stress in their relationship, then we are not serving them well. And so we have to contextualize marriage ministry and education and incorporate parenting into it. Normally, when we do marriage ed, we don't even talk about parenting, but you better do that if you're talking with blended family couples. That's half of their stress, if not more. So it is a comprehensive, let me say, blended families are complex, and ministry to blended families is more complex than ministering to couples in first families. So we retool, we educate ourselves, give them step family answers for step family questions, and they will do better and navigate the ocean well. And then you get to enjoy God's big, beautiful ocean once you're swimming well together.
Well, and that I love that. So for our marriage champions and people in churches right now, you have that whole package of premarital
Mhm.
program right there, preparing to blend, that they can just turnkey use in their
That's right.
premarital counseling to really up their game instead of just kind of trying to kind of come up with something from their traditional thing. It's there and all ready for them, correct?
That's right, and it will integrate into whatever it is you already do. If you like Prepare and Rich or Symbis and you make use of those tools, you can integrate that right into the process. But it's gonna give you in a box 10 sessions to do with couples planning to get married and form a blended family. You can draw in any of the other tools and resources that you love and know well. Um, but that's the whole idea. It's turnkey. The book was written so couples could do this all by themselves. And Amy, I hate to say it, I felt like I had to do that because I'm just so aware of how few premarital preparation people, counselors, mentors there are that actually know enough about step families to actually be helpful. So I made it so couples could do all by themselves, but I don't want them to. In the in the introduction, I tell them, "Hey, go find somebody who really knows their stuff. Hand them this book. Do this thing together. You're both going to be better off." And that would be our hope.
Well, and blended and blessed is another way that churches can help connect
Mhm.
those either preparing to marry or those who are married and are starting to face those sharks. Let's talk about that, how a church can utilize that resource.
Well, first of all, let me just back up and say virtual is the future. I think we all know that. The pandemic has definitely thrown us in that direction. We're doing virtual training for preparing to blend, so leaders can do that. You can have mentors in your church go through that very simple training process. You can just learn more about that. Blended and Blessed is a one-day live stream marriage seminar that is designed every year. It is new speakers, new theme, new content, specifically for blended family couples. So here's the benefit to a local church. You don't have to have the expertise that we've spent 30 years amassing. You don't have to really dig into this in a great detail. You don't have to go to the cost and the expense of trying to pull together an event. We're going to do that for you. We're going to be live in some city. We move it around the country. We're going to be live somewhere, but all you got to do is turn on the projector, and for less than $100 is our current cost. Less than $100 a church can host this for as many people as you can put in the room. It
Wow.
becomes your event that you get to do for couples in your church and in your community. Draw them in. And here's the story. Here's the backstory. We don't just want one event. We want you to start something. Use this as a catalytic event. Find some couples, invite them to come back to perhaps a small group or a Sunday school class or a once a month little fellowship or something that encourages them over time, and find some leaders. And the next thing you know, bring your leadership to our summit on Step Family Ministry, where we equip them. That's a 2-day in-person event. We're wanting to build you up and your team up so you can have a self-sustaining ministry. It's happening all over the country, around the world, as a matter of fact. And so it's accessible now. You're not just on your own trying to figure out how to navigate the Step Family ocean for people. We want to help you with that.
And you actually have this translated into Spanish, correct? Are
Yes.
you doing it live in Spanish as well?
That's right. In 2020, when it was during the pandemic, we actually, for the first time, had a second live stream going out all over Latin America and Spanish-speaking churches across the United States. And we're going to do that again in 2021. And 2021, we did it for the first time. 2022, we plan to continue to do that. So you have your choice if you have Spanish-speaking participants.
That is just wonderful. And it's, again, such an easy way a church
Mhm.
can really reach out, not just to the couples that are kind of hiding in their pews, but as an outreach, get people to bring their friends and have some really good tools and really good information to help them. Let's
Yeah.
talk about the summit now a little bit, because
Okay.
somebody may come to the Blended and Blessed and go, wow, I really want to do more.
Mhm.
How would they plug into that? Let's see
Yeah,
what.
let me tell you about a couple in Atlanta, Georgia, who did that very thing. They first heard about Blended and Blessed from a friend, a coworker, and this couple decided they wanted to be a part of that. So I want to say 4 years ago now, they came to Blended and Blessed, and it's in the spring every year. And then they learned about the Summit on Step Family Ministry, which is in the fall every year. And they said, well, we need to go to that so we can tool up, so we can help people in our church. And they attended our summit in early October that year. And within a month, by Thanksgiving, they had planned in their church and got 2 or 3 other churches to come in with a holiday blended family gathering where they had 40 families show up.
Wow.
And the next thing you know, they've launched a ministry and gave it a title and printed T-shirts. I
Oh,
mean, that's sort of what we wanna do, is we wanna help you start and tool up and get fresh, and then every year give you something new. So the Summit on Step Family Ministry is a 2-day in-person event that you send people to. You come to leaders, senior pastors, all the children's ministry leaders, anybody who is involved with people, and that's everybody in your church, your marriage mentors, whatever it might be. And we have a theme every year that changes, so that the focus of each year changes. We'll always have our what we call our newbies content for beginning churches and get you started. But then every year after that, you can jump into the workshops and breakouts that take a deeper dive on a specific subject related to blended families. And it's networking. I mean, we're kind of a small tribe of people who are doing this at this point in the world. And so we get people talking to one another, getting to know one another, and there's more and more voices. So you learn about other people, other resources, what's the latest thing. That's what we're attempting to do each fall at the Summit on Step Family Ministry.
that is just so good. And I know too, there's kind of an offshoot that's targeting military families as well, correct? Because
Yep.
there's a huge need among military families. Their rate of remarriage and divorce is higher even than the general population, right?
It is very much so, and that is a specialized population of people. Anybody who works in the military knows they have unique stressors that are
Yes.
specific to military life. And so we have someone on our affiliate staff with us here at Family Life who specializes in that, has developed some resources, goes to trains chaplains on how to help the people in your care, and also does a one-day event for couples in the military, specifically within blended family situations. So, yeah, again, that's just another example of there's lots of different nuances of blended family life, and we're trying to be relevant to as many of those as we can.
Well, let's back up just a little bit and talk about, as we were talking about these resources. I know some of your books, like you said, they kind of specifically highlight, you talked about the financial book.
Hmm.
And then I know there was one about the love languages. Once a
Yeah.
family is kind of started and
Mm.
come together, there's some enrichment there. Let's talk about that one, because you read that one with Gary, with Gary, right? With the love
Yes.
language. Yeah.
Yeah, Gary has done such he's contributed so much to the world in terms of his understanding of relationships and taught us all about the love languages. And he and I had a conversation one day and I said, there's one big assumption in all of the love language material, and that's that if you discover the love language of this person that care about, a child, a spouse, whatever it might be, that the assumption is they actually want you to love them that way. And I said to Gary, I said, but what if they don't? I mean, what if it's a stepchild and you, the step parent's highly motivated, and you discover your child's love language is physical touch, but they're not comfortable with hugs from their step parent, not yet. Like, what do you do? How do you apply that? And I said, I think there's a reason we need to write another book and talk about the wisdom of applying these, how to and how not to apply the love language principles to blended families specifically. Amy, really, that book is about bonding. It's really about how do you form relationship in a newly formed blended family and get going in the right direction off, right from the start. But if you find yourself somewhere down the road and you're going, wow, we got off, started wrong. Oh, what's that all about? Now I get it. Then how do you restart? One of the things we talk about in there, and I think is so important for step parents, for example, is they can easily confuse a stepchild's hesitancy
Yeah.
as rejection.
Right.
And it is often not rejection. It is often just that loyalty conflict within the heart of a child. If you won't love me by hugging, that's my love language, but I can't even hug my biological parent who lives in another home or my parent who has died. And the longing of my heart is to have that person in my world more than you, then I'm going to be resistant to you. It's not that I'm rejecting. It's not that I don't like you or don't want anything to do with you, but I just don't know how to receive that when I'm conflicted inside. That sort of notion is so helpful for a step parent who just wants to quit and give up and feels like, what's the point? No, no, no. You turn that and you educate them. You help them to see there's an opportunity here, but you do have to be patient. You have to approach them differently than straight on, head on with bear hugs. Can't do that yet.
Yeah.
Let's go back to fist bumps. Let's start with what's okay with the child. We call that pacing with the child. Little things like that go a long way towards improving that step parent stepchild relationship, which always, by the way, has implication for the step parent biological parents relationship, their marriage. If things get off kilter with children, they quickly get off kilter in the couple's relationship. So we have to work on both domains.
Yeah. I know that one of the authors, Lauren, writes so much. She has worked with you, and she talked about it's really hard for a child to root for the
Mm,
new relationship when they feel like they're rooting for the opposite team. They feel very conflicted that way. And they don't, again, it
mhm,
doesn't mean that they may not like the step parent, but it's really hard to all of a sudden become a Vikings fan if you're a Packers fan. You just can't
mhm.
do
You
it.
just can't do it.
It's
That's right.
a
That's right.
family conflict.
I am a big fan of Lauren's book, In Their Shoes, where she tries to help adults in blended families understand the journey of children and what they're thinking and feeling and what they experience, to educate the parents so that they're moving in with grace and with wisdom, as opposed to sort of stumbling in and then causing some difficulty. Yeah, it's a big contrast. Um, to just say, oh, okay, children in biological families, mom and dad raising their children, kids in those situations are just as invested in mom and dad's marriage as mom and dad are.
Yeah.
If mom and dad get off kilter and there's some stress, kids want them happy. If they separate, mom and dad separate, what do kids want? They want them back together again, right? The world is okay if mom and dad are together. The world
Yeah.
is not okay if mom and dad aren't.
Right.
Now, take that child forward, mom and dad divorce. Now mom marries somebody new. He's a great guy. But somewhere inside, I feel a little disloyal. I feel a little strange about rooting for that marriage when something within me really wishes it could be a different way. That's a barrier towards receiving the step parent being able to function as a parenting figure in the household.
Yes.
And it's a barrier when the child's sort of invested with mom and not so much with stepdad. Like that creates some rift within the blended family home that wears and tears on the couple's relationship. Like there's a lot of interesting, hard things that can happen. But let me just say this, Amy. So far, we've talked about some of the challenges. But let me tell you, blended families done right are redemptive. They are God's work in the life of somebody that brings fresh wind under their sails. That is, some people there lived through a terrible marriage and there was no honor or dignity shared between partners.
Mm.
But in a new blended marriage, there is, and it refreshes, it renews, it helps, and it can create when the family becomes stable. It can create a wonderful environment for children to grow up. We've got research to suggest that the health of a strong blended family actually negates some of the detriment that they experience going through a parent's original divorce. That's a long-term outcome, not a short-term one. We got to help people get to that long-term reward.
I am so glad that you brought that up. I know we talked about that, and that is such great hope, and it's
Mm,
also such great motivation for our church champions here to really embrace this idea, to see that do starting a blended family ministry and starting to support with your great resources that make it easy. But there's really value to that, and you'll see results in your
mm,
kids ministry. You'll see
right.
results in your youth ministry. You'll changing lives, like you said, by redeeming that.
Yeah, that's really what we're after. I believe it to my soul. Blended families done well, they're redemptive. The other side is also true. Blended families done poorly just add more angst and difficulty and pain onto the hearts and souls of adults and children who have already been through some painful something in their life. And so we don't want that. We need to be an asset. And I got to say historically, and I'm part of the church, so I'm speaking to myself and about myself. But historically churches have really not been a benefit here. We have not stepped into the gap and shown people how to do this well. We maybe had good intentions, but we really didn't do our homework. We didn't try, or maybe we just didn't try at all. Sometimes is the case. We kind of just offered judgment and just said, "Sorry, you made your bed. You got to figure it out yourself. Lie in it." What's redemptive about that? Now, what we're called to do as followers of Jesus Christ is to do what He did, and that is offer hope and offer mercy. Go heavy on mercy in people's lives, and celebrate recovery. We're not celebrating addiction. We're celebrating recovery. Uh, you know, divorce care is not celebrating divorce. It's celebrating God stepping into somebody's life in a hard place and moving them forward in relationship with Him at that point forward. That's what we're doing in blended family ministry. We are just stepping in. Something has happened. Sometimes sin is involved. Sometimes sin was not involved. And we're going to say, but from here, we're going to help you walk with the Lord and make your home a strong place where God is honored.
I love that. And because, not everybody starting a second family, like you said, sin is not always, if somebody's spouse dies,
That's right.
and not everybody who gets divorced, that's what they chose.
Hmm.
A lot of times there's people, and it's not what the kids chose ever.
Right. Right. It's
So,
exactly right.
so they need that
Hmm.
help. And like you said, that redemption, and that is right. And that is being the church, and that is being the body of Christ. And
It
you've
is.
got all the resources to make it easy.
Yep.
You
We're trying. We're trying to do what we can.
Anything that's a particular favorite? Anything special that you wanna make sure you mention?
You know, we're basically trying to provide resources to people however it is they absorb it best. So, yes, we have books, and yes, we have video, and yes, we have podcasts for the ears, right? And we have experiences. So, Family Life's Blended and Blessed event is an experience getting people together. One of the things we know is great dynamic is having step couples just be together with other step couples. They've never talked with anybody their whole life from a faith point of view who's actually trying to walk this thing out, and they support each other. They love each other. It's a wonderful, powerful thing when you get them together. We do other things at Family Life, like our annual marriage cruise. We always have an element for blended family couples who are on the cruise to get them together to talk and build them up. And so there's lots of ways today that didn't exist just a few years ago for people to connect with others, to get good information from a faith perspective, and that moves them forward. And there's so much today to help guides, leaders, mentors, pastors to be equipped to be able to help couples.
Well, I love that. That is just, it's so encouraging to
Mm.
see just the body of Christ being the church and doing it well, and you're helping them do that. So thank you, Ron. That's just so great to have you. I just was delighted that it was going to be today that we got to talk.
Yeah, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Marriage champions, if you want to find more about Ron, you can always find us at samarriage.org.